Hello, hello. Welcome to day 15 of the holiday card series for 2024. I'm Christina Werner, and in today's card video, I'm actually going to be creating 3 cards using my Festive Fun bundle that came out in October. So on the back of the stencil packaging, there were 2 examples of finished stencil patterns. And so I thought I would recreate those. I came up with the color palette when I was designing the stencils. And I thought I would recreate those and share with you the exact colors I used. So I'm starting out with some 6x6 white cardstock. I've taped that to some paper so I can keep all of my work surface clean. And then I've taken the first stencil from the set and taped it down right over top of that cardstock. The first color I'm using is Grape Soda. I'm using some mini blending brushes from Altenew. These are the perfect size for blending these really tiny kind of areas on stencils. So for some of the stencils that have some areas that want to move a little bit, like that line of circles up at the top here, I did use my fingertips just to hold that down. You could also use some pixie spray if you find that to work a little bit better. But for the most part, the stencils work great. So I'm putting on the second stencil, lining that up and taping it down, and moving on to the color Fig. So I've got 2 shades of purple on this first one, and I just ink blended everything going all the way across. For my third color, I'm actually going to move away from the purples. So the next layer in the stencil set actually has the stars on top of the tree. So I wanted to specifically use a yellow color on this, just as a nod to the stars. So I'm using the color Sunflower. And then now I'm going to go back to the purple shades. There's actually 3 different purple shades in this group of stencils for this design. And I'm using the color Lilac. So I'm going to bring in this pale purple over all of these areas, kind of fill in all those gaps. And then I'm going to move on to some pink. So the next color I'm using is actually Sweet Pea. I'm going to fill in all of those gaps, going all the way across. And then I think I've got one more pink shade that I'm going to bring in here. And I'm going to bring in Honeysuckle, which seems like, both of those shades of pinks would not really show up very well, but they actually look really great together. You don't realize that Honeysuckle is almost a little like rosy unless you have it compared to Sweet Pea. I think they just look really great together. So basically I have like 3 colors, but variations of shades for 2 of those. We've got lots of purples, lots of pinks, and then a yellow. For my second grouping of colors, I'm using Evergreen, Clover, Stardust, Poppy, Pink Lemonade, and Harbor. And this one came together really, really quickly. It has more traditional Christmas colors, and I think it just looks so cute with everything all together. For the trees specifically, I kept it to greens, so I've got Clover and Evergreen. And then for the stars, this time I used Stardust just because I wanted to keep the stars that yellow shade. Then I brought in some Harbor, which is a little bit of an unexpected color with all the greens and reds and a yellow for the star, but I think Harbor looks so great with these other colors. I brought in some Pink Lemonade as sort of a lighter shade of the red. So we've got Poppy, and then we also have Pink Lemonade. And then once all of the stenciling is done, the last color I used was Poppy. Then I peeled that up and you have a very festive, colorful pattern. So I've got both of these done here, and I thought, you know what, let's try doing this in a monochromatic fashion. So I wanted to use reds, so I'm cutting some watermelon cardstock. I think watermelon and poppy pair together extremely well, so I thought the poppy ink on top of the watermelon cardstock would look nice. So I just used the poppy ink on every single stencil. There's 6 stencils in this set. It's a lot of stenciling, but it also means you have a lot of different options for color palettes. I think this would be really pretty in teals and blues, especially for the holidays. Or even you could take out that line with the trees and the stars and use it for generic year-round cards. I think it could look great. I had someone say when they saw the pink and purple color combo that it reminded them of It's a Small World at Disneyland. And it kind of does. It kind of has that vibe. I think it looks great. So to finish off these cards, I use some dies from my Christina's Essentials die set. I'm going to use the A2 die as well as the little wonky scallop. I use the wonky scallop die on the more traditional color palette just to get a piece of this pattern that's slightly smaller than an A2 card, but has that special edge. And then for the other two, I use that A2 die shape. So this will cut out an exact 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch card front. And I like to use dies like this because, especially when I'm isolating out of a larger pattern like these 6x6 sheets of these stenciled patterns, because it allows you to move it around and get areas of the pattern that you want on your card. So I did one portrait for the red pattern, and then for the pink and purple pattern, I turned it on its side so that it was a landscape card. For the greetings on the cards, I'm going to be using the Festive Fun stamps and dies. So for the traditional Christmas palette, I thought I would stamp onto some poppy cardstock. I'm going to use one of the larger greetings in the stamp set. I'm using the Love, Peace, Joy. Oh, no, I'm not. I'm using All the Joy and Cheer for the red one. And I first prepped my poppy cardstock with an anti-static powder tool and then stamped the greeting in white pigment ink from Simon Says Stamp. So I'm actually going to be heat embossing this twice because I wanted it to have a really raised look. So after applying some white embossing powder over that entire stamped area, I then heat set it with my heat tool until all the powder was melted. And then I put that cardstock back into my MISTI, and I had not moved the greeting yet. And I'm stamping the greeting right over top of that embossed area. And this is just going to put another layer of ink down so that I can do a second layer of embossing powder. So I sprinkled on more of that alabaster embossing powder from Brutus Monroe and then hit that with my heat tool. And this really fills in all of the gaps and all of the embossing and gives it a nice solid white. I think it looks so great. For the purple and pink card, I'm using some Fig cardstock. I'm prepping that with an anti-static powder tool, just like I did for the red. And then I'm going to be stamping the other greeting from the stamp set. And this time I'm stamping in Versamark ink. I'm going to switch up the colors, and instead of doing white, I thought I would add a little bit of metallic shade. So I'm using Gilded embossing powder from Brutus Monroe. It's a nice gold color. And just like I did with that first greeting, I'm actually going to emboss this twice. So I inked up my stamp once again and stamped over that area for a second time, and then sprinkled on some more of that Gilded embossing powder. This really fills in that gap, and I think it gives a really solid impression on this colored cardstock. So the last card is the red monochromatic pattern. So I thought I would change it up and I would stamp two of the other stamps in the stamp set, this Be Merry and the Heart. And I'm stamping them in poppy ink on white cardstock, and I did end up stamping those twice. Then I used the large kind of rough edge wonky rectangle from the die set to cut out the red greeting, and I also used it to cut out the purple. And then I used the dies that coordinate with the Be Merry and the Heart, and I cut those greetings out. It was just a little bit of that white margin or white edge around the outer edge. Okay, we're going to assemble the cards. These come together so quickly. I've put some thick or kind of wide foam tape on the back of each of these stenciled patterns and then pressed them down onto a white card base. I also used that same wide foam tape for the greetings, and for this portrait one, I just put it directly in the center. It's sized perfectly for an A2 card. And then for the purple and pink version, since it was cut to exactly an A2 card, I put some Tombow Extreme Adhesive, just tape runner, on the back of the pattern and put that directly on the card base. And then the greeting is adhered kind of more off to the left side so that we can see more of that pattern over on the right. I did kind of wipe off more of that anti-static powder with a rag, and I did that on both cards. For my red card, I used the tape runner on the back of the pattern and put it directly down onto the card front. And then I cut a piece of powder cardstock from Concord and Ninth just to fill in a couple of those rows. And then I adhered the greetings and the heart with some foam squares. So those are the cards for today, all three using the Festive Fun bundle from my October 2024 release. I hope you guys enjoyed. These were a lot of fun to create. I think changing up the color palette on these would be really fun, or even doing some of the stencils with embossing powder or embossing paste. I think that could be really cool. Thanks so much for watching today. I'll be back on Friday with day 16 of the holiday card series. Thanks for watching.